على الأرض. لقد آن الأوان لإطلاق تحالف دولي يحرر اليمن من
coalition that will liberate Yemen from terrorism and rebuild its national state, and would guarantee the security and the security of the region and the world from the dangers of cross-border terrorism. And this is what we call for, to regain sovereignty in our country and put an end to the chapter of militias once and for all. I thank you, and peace and God's blessings be upon you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Presidential Leadership Council of the Republic of Yemen. The Assembly will hear now an address by Her Excellency Gordana Dzizanowska-Davkova, President of the Republic of North Macedonia. I request protocol to escort Her Excellency and invite her to address the Assembly.
Honorable Member President of the United Nations General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock, distinguished Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Guterres, esteemed Excellencies, gentlemen. Being the foundation of international law and multilateralism, the United Nations have prevented another world war and numerous conflicts and have alleviated the consequences of many humanitarian crises. They have helped many nations embark on the path to sovereign equality, lifted millions of extreme poverty, and educated entire generations. They have inspired a global movement for rights and freedoms, for social justice and equality. They have raised awareness of environmental protection and mobilized humanity in the fight against climate change. For these and many other achievements, the United Nations, its agencies and leaders, have won no less than 12 Nobel Peace Prizes. Nevertheless, the United Nations today face a geopolitical and geoeconomic earthquake that is shaking the foundations of the post-World War II order. Today's crisis stems from deep tectonic shifts, undermining the principles that shaped the world for the past 80 years. A new geopolitical era is emerging before our eyes. Instead of acting together on the urgent challenges such as peace and security, climate change and environmental destruction, artificial intelligence and growing inequalities, we seem to be heading towards a post-Hobbesian state of war of everyone against themselves. Instead of a single international order, parallel orders seem to be emerging, each with its own rules, values and interests, often directly against one another. Being paralyzed and isolated when most needed, I wonder if the United Nations is turning into the League of Nations. The signs are all around us. Instead of creating a sense of shared future, humanity is facing wars and loss of humanness. With international humanitarian law increasingly ignored, hunger is weaponized and humanitarian workers are targeted. Amid everyday violence, the world is oscillating between nihilistic pessimism and hedonistic escapism, between hopeless lamentation and heartless indifference, as in the first decades of the 20th century. The tremors of the international order have opened deep geopolitical fault lines. One of the most active is in Ukraine, where war has been raging for 3.5 years. Russia's aggression is a flagrant violation of the Charter of the United Nations and a direct threat to international peace and security. We also express our deep concern of the recent violations of the airspace of Poland, Romania and Estonia, every one of them a NATO member state. We supported the joint statement of September 12 and call for immediate de-escalation, full respect for international law, and use of preventive diplomacy to reduce tensions and preserve peace. Your Excellencies, the geopolitical fault line also runs through the Western Balkans region. The Macedonian accession process to the European Union has been continuously obstructed for 20 years, but not on the basis of objective Copenhagen criteria, but for subjective nationalistic reasons. The latest EU condition to start our negotiations is a new imposed amendment to the Constitution. The Constitution, lex superior and, in Rousseau's sense, a social contract between citizens, represents the most internal matter of any state. Our Constitution provides 4 initiators for amendments: the President of the Republic, the government, at least 30 members of parliament, and 150,000 citizens. It is clear that neither our neighbors nor the European Union are authorized proposers of amendments. We emphasize that conditioning the start of negotiations to new constitutional amendments once again reopens issues of history, culture and language, questions we have been assured were settled by the Prespa Agreement with Greece. We are constantly reminded that agreements must be respected. Pacta sunt servanda. I agree, we note that the Treaty of Friendship, Good Neighborliness and Cooperation with Bulgaria contains no provisions for constitutional amendments. Finally, through the constitutive acts, the EU defines itself as a unity of diversity and commits to respecting cultural and linguistic diversity, national and cultural identity, and dignity and integrity. How then is it possible that we are asked to discuss and negotiate with a neighbor about history, culture, and language? Time and again, we stress that we perceive ourselves as Europeans and deeply believe in the European project that brought peace and economic prosperity after the Second World War. The European ideal remains our greatest inspiration and strategic aspiration. As a country dedicated to good neighborly relations and regional cooperation, we do not seek disputes with our neighbors. What we desire is to be integrated in the Union, but without additional conditions and with national dignity preserved. We warn that after the war in Ukraine, the blocked European integration of the Western Balkans is not only a political, but also a security issue. With the political door closed for the Western Balkan countries and the door wide open for influences of third geopolitical centers of power, it is ironic that the Union calls for resilience towards them. Must we end up on the Security Council's agenda for the EU to unblock enlargement? If the European Union wants to be a geopolitical union, it must not leave the Western Balkans in a geopolitical vacuum. As the President of the European Commission has noted, the European Union must break the armor of consensus as soon as possible if it wants to complete the reunification of Europe and become a strong geopolitical factor again. Madam President, esteemed Excellencies, finally, I cannot but not address one of the most geopolitically volatile regions, the Middle East and Gaza. The Middle East has an ancient and rich tradition of interreligious and interethnic coexistence. History has shown that diversity, when respected, can be a source of cultural enrichment and long-term peace. But also history teaches that violence, regardless of its origin, deepens divisions, prolongs human suffering, and distances the parties from a just and comprehensive solution. We are convinced that sustainable peace in the Middle East can only be achieved through dialogue and diplomacy, in accord with international law. The inviolability of human life and dignity must be respected, even in times of war, in accord with international humanitarian law. In that spirit, we reaffirm our support for international efforts aimed at de-escalation, inclusive dialogue, and direct negotiations. Esteemed Excellencies, these geopolitical fault lines and tensions point unequivocally to the following. Without multilateral institutions and procedures, without international law and principles that would tame the strong and protect the weak, we will reenact the Thucydides Melian dialogue, with the strong doing what they can and the weak what they must. Consider how repeated violations of the United Nations Charter were tolerated, clearing the path for new ones. Remember the General Assembly resolutions left unenforced, the International Court of Justice's judgments disregarded and its opinions ignored, and the peace initiatives obstructed in the Security Council. Facing with the dysfunction of the current international order, some realists advise forgetting international treaties and conventions as a needless burden and seeking shelter in regional blocs and alliances. For them, the fastest and best way to resolve crisis is outside the United Nations without a Security Council mandate. However, departing from universal principles and mechanisms in favor of pragmatic opportunism and reaching for ad hoc measures pushes us towards an uncertain future of growing geopolitical and geoeconomic competition and even confrontation in the race for resources. Is that the harsh world we mean to leave to our posterity? The alternative is to try to revitalize multilateralism and make its institutions more resilient to these systemic shocks. Respected Madam President, respected attendees, young generations have the right to a renewed charter, to a reformed and strong United Nations that will enable them to live in peace among nations and peace with nature. These reforms must not be cosmetic, but profound, to enable greater inclusiveness, harmonization between values and mechanisms, optimization of national and global interests, and functional institutions. The UN reforms depend on whether they are seen as an opportunity to renew the rules-based international order or as a challenge to the privileges of some member states. Yet, what is the point of being a privileged member state of a dysfunctional, irrelevant, marginalized international organization? For effective United Nations, it is necessary for the Security Council to be reformed, to be more inclusive, accountable, and responsible for maintaining international peace and security. The General Assembly must evolve into a representative policy-making body rather than a debate club. The implementation of International Court of Justice judgments must become mandatory for all member states, ensuring the rule of international law. Reform is needed not only for old challenges, but also for new ones. Artificial intelligence brings enormous opportunities, but also incalculable risks for our civilization. It is not just a technological leap. Its impact may be greater than the industrial and digital revolutions. Aware of this, my country and I support the proposal to make artificial intelligence a priority of the 80th session. Next year, we will elect a new Secretary General of the United Nations. We need a person with leadership skills, with rich diplomatic experience, and ability to bring differences and build consensus, but also deeply humane and committed to the vulnerable. The next top diplomat of the world must possess knowledge, patience, and tact. After 80 years, it is high time for a woman to be a Secretary General of the United Nations. In a world dominated by strong men, often with weapons, we need strong women with wisdom and empathy. I believe that women who are, along with their children, are the greatest and most numerous victims of wars, have an inalienable right and obligation to prevent them. The anarchic international order is a threat to all, but especially to small states. It is natural for small and medium-sized states
to be the greatest supporters of the United Nations reforms. Distinguished Excellencies, let me share with you what we are doing in this regard. We supported the adoption of the Pact for the Future as a new global social contract. Living in one of the most climate-vulnerable regions in the world, the Mediterranean, Macedonian citizens are already experiencing the consequences of the climate crisis, such as extreme weather conditions. That is why we supported the implementation of the Paris Agreement at COP29 in Baku. We supported the Seville commitment on financing for development and integrated the Sustainable Development Goals in our National Development Strategy 2024-2044. At the third UN Ocean Conference in Nice, we committed to strong international ocean governance supporting the action plan. We are making great efforts to promote women's leadership and the implementation of the Agenda on Women, Peace and Security. We signed the new 2026-2030 framework for cooperation with the United Nations to ensure inclusive social and human development, sustainable economies and decent work, resilient and green societies and ecosystems, the rule of law and good governance. Esteemed Excellencies, we are standing in front of a great test. Either we will guarantee an international order based on visionary principles, or we will rush towards a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions for humanity. Former Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld reminded us that the United Nations was not created in order to bring us to heaven, but in order to save us from hell. We should recognize the United Nations for what it is: an admittedly imperfect but indispensable instrument of nations in working for peaceful evolution towards a more just and secure world order. Let's give them that chance. Thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Macedonia. L'Assemblée va entendre l'allocution de son...
The Assembly will now hear the statement of His Excellency, Mr. Anthony van Laurent Saint-Cyr, President of the Presidential Transition Council of the Republic of Haiti. I request Protocol to accompany His Excellency, and I invite him to speak before the Assembly.
Madame la Présidente de la...
Madam President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, distinguished heads of state and government, distinguished heads of delegation, distinguished delegates, it's with a sense of gravity and a great deal of hope that I convey the voice of Haiti and the greetings of a dignified and resilient people, which, despite hardships, is claiming for itself and for all of humanity 3 universal promises: development, respect for human dignity, and peace. Peace, which is now an absolute imperative for the Haitian people. On behalf of this people, Madam President, I would like to warmly congratulate you on your election as President of this Assembly. I also would like to thank Secretary General Antonio Guterres for his unwavering commitment to our organization and his constant and multifaceted support for the Republic of Haiti. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this session, Better Together, 80 Years and More for Peace, Development, and Human Rights, honors the outstanding work carried out over the past decades. It also recalls the importance of remaining unified and resilient in the face of the unprecedented crises threatening the future of the planet, as well as international peace and security. Today, hunger is threatening millions of lives. Armed conflicts are multiplying and extreme poverty is deepening, causing forced migrations that jeopardize international stability and that put the solidarity between nations to the test. In addition to these challenges, we also are dealing with climate change, a rise of terrorism, mass atrocities, transnational crime, the erosion of human rights, and disinformation. We cannot turn a blind eye to the urgent need to strengthen our healthcare systems, to ensure a just energy transition, and to promote gender equality and youth inclusion. These issues require us, the world leaders, to shoulder our responsibility to build a UN that is better adapted to the challenges of today and the hopes of tomorrow. We must ensure that all of our actions, including technological breakthroughs such as artificial intelligence, foster peace, development, and human dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, just a 4-hour plane ride from here, a human tragedy is unfolding, one of the most devastating of our hemisphere. Every day, innocent lives are extinguished by bullets, fire, fear. Entire neighborhoods are disappearing, forcing more than 1 million people into internal exile and annihilating memories, investment, and infrastructure. Thousands of children have been deprived of their fundamental right to education. Thousands of young people are condemned to despair. Hundreds of women and girls have been raped, and they will forever carry the scars of this violence in their bodies and souls. Almost half of the population is facing acute food insecurity. The healthcare system is collapsing. Hospitals are being vandalized, burned, or forced to shut down. Doctors are fleeing. Lives are being lost due to a lack of treatment. Even the treatment for persons living with HIV and tuberculosis is under threat. This is the face of Haiti today, a country at war, a modern-day Guernica, a human tragedy at the doorstep of America, only a 4-hour flight from here. It's important to say this. Haiti is experiencing a war between criminals that want to impose violence as their social order and a population, an unarmed population that is fighting for human dignity and freedom. The response must be firm and determined. Today, the international community must stand alongside Haiti and take large-scale measures, not half steps. A strong, coordinated, and immediate action is needed. Silence and inaction are not an option. We must act quickly to protect lives, to protect the innocence of children, to provide youth with a future, and to allow citizens to decide their own future at the voting booth. Every minute lost means human lives sacrificed and an erosion of democracy. Haiti wants peace. Haiti expects peace. Haiti has the right to peace. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, peace today is the most pressing need of the Haitian people. It is the raison d'etre behind our tireless battle, the battle between our security forces, led by our security forces and the multinational security support mission. Many policemen and soldiers have fallen in the war against criminal groups. We pay tribute to these heroes, Haitian and Kenyan, who have laid down their lives for their commitment to restoring peace and security in Haiti. Today, out of the 2,500 troops initially required and promised, there are only 1,000 members of the multinational mission on the ground. Their courage, combined with our own efforts, have not been sufficient to contain the security crisis. And yet we have increased by 40% the budget for our security forces. We've recruited new members. We have strengthened our troops and acquired more material and equipment. We must face the reality. Haiti is at the epicenter of an unprecedented regional threat. Powerful and heavily armed criminal networks are trying to destabilize our country and take over the economies of our entire common space. The new front lines of this battle are in our country, in Haiti. If we lose this battle on our soil, it will be futile to try to contain it in the rest of the region. That is why we must show the same determination, the same resolve, and the same unity that we showed in the fight against terrorism. Haiti could never overcome this challenge single-handedly. Today, it is crucial to mobilize a strong force with a clear mandate and with adequate material, logistical, and financial resources. In this regard, the lessons of the MMS and recommendations of Haitian experts must be taken into account. We also need heightened international cooperation based on intelligence sharing and on rigorous border control to curb the flow of arms ammunition, drugs, and financing toward these gangs. Peace cannot be restored unless our regional partners take concrete measures to ensure their territories do not serve as a starting point or a transit hub for this kind of trafficking. Approaches that failed yesterday will not save Haiti today. It is critical to listen to the voice of the Haitian people, to try new solutions that are stronger and more adapted to the realities on the ground. In this regard, we fully support the efforts made to transform the multinational security support mission. We also call for solidarity from the entire international community, especially for the commitment of members of the Security Council for a vote in favor of the resolution establishing a gang suppression force. That is why I would like to express on behalf of the Haitian people my profound gratitude to the United States and to Panama for this initiative, the implementation of which will mark a turning point in our fight against insecurity, which is suffocating our nation. I thank the administration of President Trump for the efforts made to provide support and resources in our common fight against the gangs, these enemies that are threatening both Haiti and the entire region. Today, the complexity of the Haitian crisis cannot serve as a pretext for endless talk, for drawn-out negotiations, or for stalemates caused by geopolitical considerations. Every day that we hesitate, criminal groups benefit. We urgently need to be proactive, to transcend divisions, to act together, to promote the values that bring us together, peace and human dignity. Haiti would welcome the holding of a high-level meeting to overcome obstacles and to make tangible progress. In this regard, we welcome the countries of the region and thank them for their constant support, especially through declarations in various regional organizations, including the Organization of American States and CARICOM. We appreciate their support and advocacy with partners from the Security Council for a real solution to the security crisis in Haiti. We also pay tribute to all of those states which during previous crises stood by our side and express the hope to be able to count once again on their commitment. Together, we can and we must resolve this crisis which has lasted for too long already. 12 million women, men, and children are expecting this of us. Ladies and gentlemen, the Presidential Transition Council was born of a political consensus that stemmed from intense negotiations between the nation's political parties. This council, which was supported by various international partners and facilitated by leaders of CARICOM, has a clear agenda which centers on holding free and credible elections. I repeat, free and credible elections. Despite the many challenges caused by the security crisis, the electoral process, for which the PTC and the government have shown real political will, has made real headway. The Electoral Council, Provisional Electoral Council, has already identified more than 85% of the voting centers, mobilized more than 70% of the elections personnel, and national financing to the tune of $65 million is guaranteed. The Presidential Transition Council is working closely with the MMS, the OAS, CARICOM, and BNU to ensure free, transparent, and inclusive elections reflecting the sovereign will of the Haitian people and guaranteeing the full and effective participation of young people, women, people with disabilities, and marginalized groups. To ensure productive political cooperation, constant efforts are being made and will continue to expand dialogue with the various political parties to strengthen consensus and to prevent a power vacuum which would be fatal for democracy and stability. The Haitian people must be able to choose its own leaders. The state wants credible elections. Our greatest challenge remains restoring security. The urgent and solemn call that we have once again issued to resolve the security crisis in Haiti must not be left to languish on paper nor be lost amid rhetoric and unkept promises. In Haiti, peace can no longer wait. Ladies and gentlemen, the transitional period does not allow us to launch all of the major structural reforms the country needs, but the humanitarian crisis we are currently experiencing must be overcome. To this day, the Haitian state has provided 72% of emergency assistance for IDPs and is assisting families to relocate. We are profoundly grateful to our international partners that have assisted us in the humanitarian response, and we are keenly interested in the promising initiatives put forward by those which, like the Association of Caribbean States, have chosen to join our effort. But our strategy is not limited to immediate assistance. We must move from assistance to investment. To this end, the government is determined to develop two major economic hubs, the Great North and the Great South, based on strategic sectors such as agro-industry, textiles, renewable energy, tourism, and services. Haiti will continue to count on its key partners to weather this difficult period and to relaunch its economy. We call for their support through the establishment of concrete mechanisms such as the renewal of the Hope Help Law or launching urban renovation projects, which will allow us to create jobs, to put an end to the humanitarian impasse, and to reduce migration pressure on Haitians in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, 2025 marks the bicentennial of the order forcing Haiti to pay a ransom for recognizing its own independence. We call for reparations, not out of bitterness or vengefulness, but out of a desire for justice and truth. We noted with satisfaction the statement by the French presidency recognizing the need to open spaces for dialogue and historic truth, as well as the resolution of June 5, 2025 of the French National Assembly recognizing the injustice of this ransom. Haiti has established a National Reparations and Restitution Committee. We call for this progress to be accompanied by concrete action. France, which is the cradle of human rights, today has the opportunity to write a new chapter in its history with Haiti by honoring the ideals of freedom, equality, and fraternity that unite us. Ladies and gentlemen, I must underscore the invaluable support provided by the Haitian diaspora throughout the world, who are often living in hardship. Whether in America, in Europe, in Africa, or elsewhere, the millions of Haitians living abroad contribute to the development of Haiti. We are undergoing a multidimensional crisis, and we call for patience and understanding from our partners and friends so that our nationals are always treated with respect and dignity. Behind every migrant there is a face, a family, a history, and a contribution to be made to their new country of residence. Haiti reaffirms its commitment to dialogue and to bilateral cooperation in the spirit of neighborliness and mutual respect to identify balanced and long-term solutions to Haiti's problems. The safe and orderly circulation of goods and of people, especially through air transport, is crucial for a shared future and common prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, the Haiti of tomorrow deserves peace and prosperity, a future based on independent judiciary, universal education, affordable health care for all, and an economy that provides every citizen with the same chance at success. This future also requires bold reforms, independent justice, and an end to impunity. On April 16, 2025, we enacted a decree establishing two specialized judiciary bodies, one to litigate crimes and complex financial infractions, and another to prosecute mass atrocities and sexual violence. We're making progress toward making these bodies operational. We are prepared to continue down this path. This is not the time for Haiti fatigue. The international community does not have the right to turn away from Haiti's situation. In light of this crisis, silence would not be neutrality, it would be complicity. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to pay tribute to the Haitian people. Representing them here is the greatest honor of my life. Beyond my functions as president of the Presidential Transition Council of Haiti, I am a real, active Haitian citizen with a profound love for my homeland, a land of freedom and dignity, a land of courage and talent. Haiti is not a nation that has given up. We are a great people, a people that stands together, men and women who have sacrificed for their homeland and for humanity. Haiti is not a playground for armed criminals. Rather, it is a nation on its feet, comprised of dignified, resilient families who every day, despite terrible adversity, are fighting for a better future. I pay tribute to my fellow countrymen and women who are, without a doubt, among the most resilient people on earth. They deserve better. Giving them new hope is my only mission, and that is why now I call upon you to stand side by side with Haiti. We must build peace in Haiti, for the Caribbean, for the Americas, for all of humanity. Thank you.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Presidential Council of the Transition of the Republic of Haiti.
An address by His Excellency Mikhail Kabalashvili, President of Georgia. I request protocol to score His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly. I can see it here. Yeah.
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I represent a country with a 3,000-year history, the cradle of one of the world's most ancient civilizations and the brave Georgian people, filled with pride and dignity, a country that possesses a unique alphabet, an ancient language, and 17th century-long Christian traditions. The history of Georgia is continuous chronicle of our people's struggle for survival against invaders, through which we have miraculously managed to preserve our cultural identity, traditions, and national character. Despite centuries of continuous warfare with invaders, the cultural environment in Georgia has always been distinguished by exceptional humanism, tolerance, and compassion for others. Tolerance, openness to others, harmonious coexistence, and diversity form the cornerstone of our ancient culture, which is brilliantly reflected in Georgian polyphony, in our national traditions, and in the world-renowned Georgian epic Shota Rustaveli's The Knight in the Panther's Skin. Georgia is a place where, throughout history, no human has ever been oppressed or persecuted on ethnic or religious grounds. Quite the opposite. We have always been known for our profound sense of justice. I represent the Georgian people, who know both the cost of war and the value of freedom and peace, a people who cherish their rich history and traditions, while at the same time facing with resolve the challenges that lie before our country. Amid a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape and unprecedented global challenges, such as ongoing conflicts, climate change, ideological polarization, cultural alienation, and war-driven humanitarian crisis, Georgia stands firmly as a guardian of dialogue, peace, stability, and sustainable development. Despite the many challenges surrounding us, we have managed to ensure the security of our people. The fundamental philosophy of the Georgian government remains to preserve peace, and no matter the cost, to spare our people from war. For the fourth year now, a horrific, bloody war has been raging in Ukraine, bringing catastrophic consequences and immense human suffering. Drawing on the bitter experience of the 2008 war, whose wounds have not yet healed for the Georgian people, we understand better than many the pain that Ukrainian nation endures today. Now as before, Georgia expresses its firm and unwavering support for Ukrainian people. As we deeply understand the importance of peace, Georgia contributes to the transformation of the South Caucasus and strives to turn it from a zone of conflicts into a space of dialogue among civilizations and economic prosperity. We welcome President Donald Trump's peace initiative between Armenia and Azerbaijan, as well as his efforts to bring the bloody war between Russia and Ukraine to an end soon. Georgia has always supported and actively strived to establish sustainable and long-term peace in the South Caucasus, as well as to deepen trust and cooperation amongst its neighbors. For centuries, our country has been a crossroads of civilization and a space for dialogue among diverse cultures. Today, Georgia is reclaiming its historical role. Close relations with the countries of the South Caucasus and Central Asia, existing agreements with the European Union, and the Georgia's key position in the Middle Corridor all give our country a special significance, both within the region and across the Eurasian continent. Georgia is the shortest connecting route and natural bridge between Europe and Asia, the West and the East. Thanks to our geographical location and pragmatic foreign policy, Georgia is emerging as a multidimensional and multifunctional regional hub, both in terms of trade and energy transit. Georgia makes a significant contribution to the development of the Middle Corridor strategic route and does everything to ensure that the corridor becomes the fastest, most reliable, and most stable connecting route between East and West. We are actively working with international investors, developing infrastructure and facilitating the creation of new energy transit routes, all of which ultimately enhance the connectivity between Asian and European markets. Within the framework of the Middle Corridor and its development, Georgia has launched strategically significant projects aimed at increasing the volume and intensity of rail, sea, and air transportation. Among them, the railway modernization project has already been completed, while work is actively underway on the deep sea port in Anaklia, the new international airport in Tbilisi, and the Black Sea submarine cable projects. These projects, on one hand, provide landlocked countries in Central Asia and the South Caucasus with maritime connectivity to the rest of the world. On the other hand, the projects are implementing help diversity energy routes. We are implementing help diversity energy routes, thereby significantly enhancing the energy security of Europe and South Caucasus. To promote the development of the Middle Corridor and enhance connectivity between the two largest markets, Asia and Europe, Georgia has been hosting the Tbilisi Silk Road Forum for 8 years. It is an international platform for dialogue and new opportunities, attended up to 2,000 delegates from 60 countries. Our goal is to develop constructive relations based on mutual respect and shared benefits with major economies such as the United States, China, European Union, and others. We are open to any dialogue and cooperation, but at the same time, we demand respect and fair and dignified approach. What the Georgian people will never accept is being spoken to in the language of ultimatums, blackmail, or intimidation. Georgia is a faithful adherent to the fundamental principles of values of the United Nations and a dignified, responsible member of the international community, as evidenced by the considerable efforts by the current government of Georgia to improve the protection of human rights. It is precisely thanks to the pragmatic and rational policies of the government of Georgia that we have maintained peace and economic growth, significantly improving the quality of life of our citizens. Despite numerous challenges in recent years, Georgia has demonstrated remarkable resilience to external shocks. The positive trajectory of Georgia's development is reflected in and confirmed by the international rankings and indicators of the world's most reputable organizations. Despite 20% of Georgia's territory remaining under occupation, we continue to pursue development and progress with great energy and determination. We are entrusted with the mission that our children may live in a stronger, dignified Georgia and peaceful world. And now I want to address our Abkhaz and Ossetian brothers and sisters on the other side of the occupation line. For centuries, we have written Georgia's history together, a history filled with the heroism of our ancestors through our shared struggle for survival of our nation and the love for our motherland. We have never been a large empire imposing its rules on the others. We have always been a country proud of its diversity. Georgia is a place where civilizations have met, blended and balanced each other for centuries. Our culture is the very product of this complex and enduring synthesis. My Abkhaz and Ossetian brothers and sisters, our cultural code has not changed. For us, diversity is not a problem. It remains an essential formula for our existence, which is why we always meet our compatriots from the other side of the Caucasian line with open hearts and outstretched hands. It's our duty through joint efforts to overcome artificially created obstacles, rebuild broken bridges, and leave past grievances to history. As a people of exceptional patience and resilience, I believe that one day we will, together with our children, we will live with our children in a united, happy, and developed Georgia, where nothing will stand in the way of our harmonious coexistence. Herewith, I would like to express my gratitude to the international community for its unwavering support of Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Georgia, like the entire world, is going through a pivotal moment in modern history. We live in a transitional era where the future of the international order remains uncertain. The United Nations must ensure our planet's transition to a peaceful, stable, and fair, multipolar international order. Georgia is responsible, as a responsible member of the international community, is ready to support the United Nations in becoming the inevitable alternative to war and the principal guarantor of peace. I would like to reiterate that we are prepared and open, taking into account our national interests, to engage in dialogue with all parties on issues of global and regional significance. The current reality requires us to face difficult issues and initiate an open, pragmatic, and result-oriented dialogue. I believe that only in this way we can overcome common global challenges and unlock new opportunities for the benefit of our countries, peoples, and future generations. Thank you very much for your attention. May God bless humanity.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of Georgia. La Asamblea escuchará.
The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Luis Alberto Arce Catacora, Constitutional President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Muy buenos días.
A very good morning to all of you. Allow me to express brotherly greetings to the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, Annalena Baerbock, and through her to the entire Assembly. The 80th session isn't just any other date. It is a space for a historic time which invites us to stop and to look back, to remember why this organization was born and why it has seen the results that humanity was waiting for after the 2 world wars in which the fight for wealth and areas of influence left in its wake millions of dead, displaced and wounded. We are living with a wound that we're trying to overlook. Over 8 decades, in the concert of nations, we have seen the development of narratives that, using the skill of the great powers with long-standing experience in the international community, have camouflaged deep wounds and the devastating memories of humanity. They've done so using smart normative texts that pretend to be the duty of the United Nations through audiovisuals and others that are not very effective in facing flagrant problems such as neocolonialism in all of its expressions, territorial occupation, economic, political and cultural interference, racism, discrimination, the arms race and violence which is implicit in all of this without taking into account other aspects such as hunger, climate change, the food crisis and the increasingly frequent economic crises. The effects of these realities are clear to all. Confrontations and discourse that promotes hatred and division between kindred states, inequality, exclusion, poverty and inequality and injustice, still produced within institutions that were created to protect the rights of the weakest. And we're not even talking about economic, social and the cultural rights of people, and even more if you look at the rights of indigenous peoples. A sincere assessment leads us to confirm that in 80 years we have not met the expected results. Consequently, we are not in a good position. The world remains divided and confronted against itself more than 80 years ago. Today in the world there is greater inequality in the distribution of wealth than there was 80 years ago. The poverty figures, inequality and injustice, rather than being curbed, is on the increase. The risk that any remaining peace should disappear and the Third World War would overtake the entire planet is very close if we don't react in time. The danger here is that the unstoppable force of capitalism with the misuse of artificial intelligence would increase the climate change, would liquidate the planet and would convert the immense majority of the population into unnecessary beings is also something that we can't completely rule out. We're not in a good place. The UN was established on the basis of the foundations of the skeletons of the Holocaust and the not only physical but also moral ruins left by the fascist racism and also increasing neocolonialism with the use of 2 atomic bombs. One of the goals that gave rise to the United Nations was to not repeat the barbarity of war. Today we hear the echoes of the drums of war on all continents. We see the practice of genocide on the sole decision of 2 countries. We deny the right to be free and sovereign to a people. Sophisticated weapons are used against a sovereign country, and increasing militarization is being promoted within a region with double standards in combating the war on drugs. And at the same time, we maintain a criminal blockade against its people and the state for the sole crime of having claimed its own independence more than 6 decades ago. Wars are not the same as we had 80 years ago. Wars now are multidimensional. They use economic, financial, media, information, cyber warfare, without even taking into account military warfare, which now encompasses biological warfare, war from space, and other technologies that continue to be developed with impunity on the basis of technology of war. It would be nothing new to have climate wars that would have an impact on sovereignty and food security, jeopardizing strategic resources such as water. We are putting at risk the very survival of the human race on Earth and of life itself on the planet. Just taking off the mask from all of these tragedies, we can see that the cause of all of this is the wild capitalist system that places the greed of the few over the rights and lives of the majority on the planet. The cause of this is the current capitalist development, which tries to resolve its own crisis and ends up returning to the original forms of accumulation and increasing rates of profit. Capitalism and its imperialist face is once again using the deployment of violence, plundering natural resources from sovereign states, and with bloodletting to lead to the political and economic power and take that away from another. Added to that, we have a third cause of the current wars, which is more immediate. That is the obsessive zeal of the new Trump administration to give the United States back its position as a hegemonic power at the cost of the liberal system, free trade, globalization, and to cause pain and death. Why? For what? To take ownership over natural resources, to take control over commodities for the benefit of an imperialist system, and to subordinate the majority of countries for their insatiable thirst for privilege and wealth, and to try to maintain a unipolar order at any cost. The recent publication of the US Strategic Defense Policy sets out a deployment of its troops around the world to in its areas of influence, Canada, Central and South America, among others. The recent history with our neighbors has made us realize this is nothing else but a new way of implementing Monroeism, which was a doctrine which said that America is for the North Americans, generating conditions for a new era of neocolonialism. Madam President, distinguished heads of state and government, from the indigenous name for Latin America and the Caribbean, we can say that we are a zone of peace, and we did so at the second summit of CELAC in Havana in 2014. The nations in our region are complying with this mandate that we set ourselves, still bearing in mind our political and ideological differences on various topics and with regard to border and territorial occupation-based disputes that remain ongoing. We can say, when we invert the equation of the Pentagon, that it is peace rather than war that guides our international relations. In hearing this statement in 2022 in this same place, I came to appeal to the United Nations for a General Assembly to declare to the world that it would be an entire territory of peace. And 11 years have passed since that historic declaration of CELAC, and 3 years since I made that statement in this assembly. Not only have we not declared the world as a zone of peace, rather we are facing the harsh reality of seeing how death is becoming increasingly normalized in international relations. We also feel the threat of fascism in all of its variants to try to exploit and dominate peoples at the current time. The threat of death has made is covering Latin America and the Caribbean. We are seeing a bellicose potential which would even go so far as to use missiles, submarines, helicopters, using the pretext that this maritime space is being used against the national security of the United States, through the illegal introduction of cocaine through illegal gangs belonging to drug cartels. Beyond violations of international law, this provocative action of imperialism has two intentions. First, to intervene into our kindred Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela that since 1999 has been raising high the flags of the freedom of its people and the sovereignty of its state, and which possesses considerable natural resources, particularly in oil, which the North wishes to appropriate and claim. Secondly, to try to reconquer the Latin America and the Caribbean on the basis of it undermining liberal democracy, to impose militarization and to use other colonialist practices that we should call out. Imperialism is said to be used to combat drugs trafficking. This is a fallacy, because if this were true, it would actually be taking effect within their own country, where the demand for this type of drugs is high, and where in its origins where we see different types of organized crime. What the United States is trying to do is to give our region the role of holding back the edification of a multipolar world and to submit it to its own interests. Added to these military actions, the images of which have been seen around the world, we see other types of devastating actions, such as those aimed at strengthening the economic blockade against Cuba. Billions of dollars are owed by the United States to the Cuban state due to these unilateral coercive measures, which are explained on the basis of rejecting the first communist revolution, which will never be destroyed. The threat of death is also afflicting the Middle East. In the Middle East, the pain of millions of families and the death of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians finds no consolation. All of this history tells us, has the unconditional support of the United States, which wants to speed up the displacement of the Palestinian people as quickly as possible. Peace will be an empty world while the Palestinian people continues to face practices of genocide and does not have its own land and full sovereignty with East Jerusalem as its capital. But in this region, that's not the only thing that's happening. The fragile political and geopolitical stability is threatened by preventive attacks against the Islamic Republic of Iran and against the small nation of Yemen, very similarly to what is happening, what was done by ex-President George Bush. The threat of death is also clear in Eurasia. In Eurasia, despite the intermittent attempts to achieve a political outcome, the expansionist ambitions of NATO, which is nothing else than the military arm of concentrated capital, is trying to protract the military conflict by using Ukraine as a launch pad against the Russian Federation. The threat of death also hangs over Asia. The East China Sea, which is an area of great geostrategic and economic importance, is facing two problems that could have an impact not only on the region but also the entire world. The overcoming of the sovereignty of Taiwan by the People's Republic of China is another example of explicit neocolonialism that is encouraged by the United States, as well as the dispute on the Senkaku Islands, the sovereignty of which is disputed between Japan, Taiwan, and China. It appears that these islands are home to important hydrocarbon resources. Furthermore, the constant tension between North Korea and South Korea could not only become a problem that affects these two countries, but also the entire security of the world. Heads of state and government, I've been referring to this entire world to say that in this new imperialist intervention, we should call it what it is, neocolonialism. And what should we do? I'm asking this because it's led to one of the most outstanding strategies of the fight for the emancipation of labor over capital. This is also the fight of life over death. I wish to propose that we firstly establish a commission for reparations following slavery, apartheid, genocide and colonialism in the countries of the Global South. To do so, the United Nations should find a way to ensure that those designing war and death pay their billions of dollars rather into a reparations fund. I hope that this rostrum, the highest on the international stage, will also serve to be able to launch an appeal and recognize that colonialism and neo-colonialism was and is an historic mistake that brings and continues to bring a social wound over the population that it victimizes. It also does this with indigenous societies that it affects in particular. Today, on behalf of the construction of a fair future, we have to condemn the devastating impact of colonialism in the past and the present. I appeal to the heads of state of CELAC and the African Union to join forces and to oppose the adverse consequences of colonialism. This commission that I've mentioned should set up effective mechanisms to restore historic justice in the following spheres: reparations, land rights, recovery of the environment destroyed through the action of the colonizers and transnational corporations, apologies for the colonial past through the restitution of cultural goods of the indigenous peoples that were taken by the colonizers during the period of expansion and genocide, the prevention of neocolonial practices, programs for the development of indigenous peoples and the preservation of their cultural identity. We should also provide compensation to people who have resisted the military occupation of their territories and those that are suffering under unilateral sanctions and economic blockades. Secondly, we should convert the UN General Assembly into a body with binding power so that it can be an effective voice for all peoples and not a space where we simply realize the will of the most powerful. We need this forum to be an ethical nucleus, a political heart, and the living spirit of a new era guided by the culture of life. We need the resolutions adopted within the UN General Assembly to not be vetoed by any superpower and to be truly complied with. This means ensuring that multilateralism is truly valid and not just a formality. We should declare the world as a zone of peace and promote demilitarization as far as possible. The immense majority of the population in the world refuses to accept that the revitalization or overcoming the cyclical crises of capital should be done on the basis of investment in billions of dollars to manufacture all types of conventional and unconventional weapons. Just 1/3 of military expenditure would give us better and greater education, health and housing guaranteed for everyone. The UN has to become a pact for peace and for life as the shared destiny of everyone who believes in living together. 4, we need to undertake a profound reform of the Security Council that would prevent one of 2 countries holding up global stability. We need to ensure this reform and ensure the reform that the countries of the Global South have been insisting on for several years. Democratizing the Security Council would be giving effect to the principle of the legal equality of states and democratizing the future. It would be to ensure that the voices of Africa, Latin America and the Caribbean, Asia and the historically marginalized peoples would also count. 5, we should move towards the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. Bolivia, together with the Amazonian peoples, speaks up to recall the urgent need for international cooperation to strengthen the conservation of the Amazon. We should do so through strengthening the sovereignty of Amazonian countries over this strategic biome for the world. Defending the Amazon means defending life. 6. We must reject all forms of commercial war and work to reduce economic and social divides between the countries of central capitalism and the countries on the periphery. Trade wars not only affect companies, but also the immense world of work. It also lessens to alarming levels the possibility for lower classes to access acceptable food. The hegemonic and capitalist interests don't have any right to overtake rights of trade and reduce the right to employment, food and education for the working classes. Dear guests here at the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, I'm very grateful that on this occasion of the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations, having listened to the analysis and the outlook of the plurinational state of Bolivia over critical problems facing us today, and as we look ahead to working together for peace, development and collective human rights, the Bolivian people, to whom we have guaranteed a democratic transit that we have not seen in 28 years in our country, is looking forward to seeing the changes that we must see within the United Nations in order to guarantee global peace. Thank you very much.
Gracias. On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Constitutional President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Brice Clotaire Oligui Nguema, President of the Gabonese Republic, Head of State and Head of Government. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.